the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Cowboys. Locked On Cowboys.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you for tuning in. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. And joining me today, as always, is Landon McCool. You can check him out on Twitter at McCoolBCB. You can also listen to him on the Best Coast Boys podcast. Landon, what is going on, sir?
Not much. It's Tuesday. It's Twitter Tuesday per usual. I love Twitter Tuesdays because the conversation can kind of go anywhere.
Oh, and it will. I'm sure it will.
And I'm sure it will. And I've been told that you have a surprise for me as well. So I'm excited to get started.
Yes. So my surprise for you, Landon, is today I was kind of just walking around my house and thinking about what I want the Cowboys to do at number 10. And for the last, 3-4 months, I've been all in on the Patrick Surtain bandwagon. I still am. If he's the pick at number 10, I think the Cowboys had a fantastic draft, and it's going to be awfully hard to mess it up. So if they pick Surtain at 10, it's an A+ by me. However, I think my ideal pick at number 10 has actually changed, and I'm about to reveal it to you now. No, it's not Kyle Pitts.
Wow.
Because it's not very well.
I thought this was another opportunity for us to have another podcast about Kyle Pitts.
I mean, I would. I can do 20
surprising.
minutes. I can do 20 minutes on Kyle Pitts whenever I want. No, it's actually not. It's Rashawn Slater, the offensive tackle from Northwestern.
Wow.
And I'm going to give you my reasoning why and what changed, right? So last night, our good friend Marcus Armstrong from Mock Draftable, I was actually putting up some of the charts for the offensive linemen, and I tweeted out Rashawn Slater's chart at offensive guard. And not surprisingly, he tested as an elite athlete, and we knew this. This isn't anything new. I think it was just a visual of seeing him basically hit the 90th percentile in every athletic testing mark is what made me so excited. And the more and more I think about this draft, Landon, if you take Rashawn Slater at 10, not only are you getting a guy that could potentially be the future left or right tackle, you're also getting a guy that could probably be a Pro Bowl guard right away. I think it just allows you to use, rounds 2 through 7 to address your defense. If you pick Slater at 10, you probably don't need to spend another pick on offense the rest of the draft outside of maybe a receiver on day 3. It just gives you so much more ammunition to spend on the defensive side of things. And I think this defense is more than one player away from being ready to go. And that's why I think I like Slater so much at 10. Your thoughts?
Well, I have to unpack it a little bit. First of all, are you saying that not that this is even possible, but is Sewell on the board when you're picking Slater?
I don't think it's very likely. I mean, I think I have Sewell ahead of Slater, but it just feels way more unlikely that he'll be there, right?
I agree that I think it's more likely that Slater will be there than Sewell. So,
but who's a better fit for Dallas? Like, if both are there, which one would you rather have? Because I think I have more confidence in Sewell being a left tackle in the NFL, but I think I have more confidence in Slater just being a better overall player, whether it's at tackle or guard.
Yeah, I guess. And look, I love offensive line play, but I really struggle with the idea of taking a guard at 10, or a guy that I think the appeal to me for Slater is that he could play guard at an extremely high level and then play tackle for you down the road. Because
exactly, yes.
But I guess my point is that unless you think that he can do both, unless you think that he can be your starting offensive tackle of the future and your immediate offensive guard, like Pro Bowl level offensive guard right now, I don't know that he's worth 10 because you got to make sure that he can swing out to tackle, because I don't know that I feel great about taking just an offensive guard at 10 necessarily.
I agree,
especially with where they are. But if they feel like that they can actually play him at tackle, I don't hate the pick. I mean, I still would prefer Surtain. But I think
fine. Which is fine. I
agree
I have no problem with that.
I agree with the idea that taking a player at 10, an offensive player at 10, is not, prohibitive to allowing you to get what you still need on the defensive side of the ball if you sequence things correctly.
Do you think Slater can play tackle in the NFL?
I think he can play tackle in the NFL.
Can he be a good tackle?
But that's I think that's the standard, right? Like, is that you're taking him at 10, and suddenly if you're swapping him out to offensive tackle, are you still getting a high level offensive lineman that you drafted at 10? And that's the thing where I get concerned, is that what happens if I slide Slater out to tackle and he's not great at tackle?
What would be your biggest fear? What would be your biggest fear about Slater at tackle? Because I feel like in this Mike McCarthy, Kellen Moore offense, the technique and the athleticism is more important than the length and the power, right? Because the Cowboys are going to get rid of the ball pretty quickly. So if you can get a guy that can stay in front of defenders, I think that's what makes me feel good that he can survive at tackle.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I think he could be a very good tackle, like obviously better than average, better than replacement level, above that. Could
he be on the Lyle Collins level of tackles?
Yes, I think he could probably be on that level.
Okay.
Yeah. So but it scares me a little bit, just because, again, I don't know that. I think there's some projection there, even though he played tackle at Northwestern. I still think that, you see him against Chase Young, and obviously that's why we're having these conversations is that he's had some incredible reps against incredible pass rushers. I just worry about, like, week in and week out, necessarily, he's kind of at a point where he's near his ceiling. I don't know how much better he's going to get from here, because it feels like he's maxed technique, and he'll get a little bit better from there. And then I think that's why I really prefer Sewell, and I kind of look at people that look at Slater as a better player kind of sideways, because I think Sewell does what Slater does, except he has terrible technique or not terrible, but he has a lot that he can clean up. And I think he can still get a lot better. I don't know how much better Slater is getting from here. I don't have a problem with him at 10 at all. But I would say that of those guys that you are cool with taking at 10, he's probably the bottom one for me, to be honest.
Yeah, for me, I think the reason I like Slater so much is because the floor is so high.
That's very true.
And I think, especially in this draft, Landon, when there's so much unknown, I think knowing that you can get, at the very worst, a guy that can play guard and center, at a reasonable level, is intriguing to me. And I'm one that loves to invest, picks into the offensive line. We know how the Cowboys are going to want to win games. They're going to want to score points. You got to protect your quarterback. So if you're telling me, hey, I can pick a guy at 10 and he's at least going to contribute in some way, I like that. And then on top of that, I just think he's got Zach Martin potential. I know he's maybe not quite as strong as Zach Martin coming out of Notre Dame. He's also like 2 years younger, but I think the appeal of getting a 10-year starter at pick number 10 on the offensive line is very intriguing to me.
Yeah, I mean, all those are valid points, and all of them are reasons why I would definitely have no problem with taking him at 10. The floor aspect is obviously very appealing, because you just, at this point, you're trying to get out of this draft with players that you feel like are going to hit, because you just have so little information. I'm totally on board with what you're saying. I think I still prefer some of these other guys more, but again, I am certainly not going to be upset if Rashawn Slater is the pick.
Yeah, I mean, let's be clear. We have a pretty tight group of guys that we like at 10. Obviously, Patrick Surtain. If Penei Sewell is there, that's an easy pick. If Kyle Pitts is there, and I think depending on how you feel about Rashawn Slater, he could be anywhere at number 2, number 3, or number 4 of that list. But all 4 of those guys are worthy of a top 10 selection. And I think, Lane, I'll speak for both of us. I think we'd be happy with any of those guys at number 10.
Yeah, and I think if Rashawn Slater and Patrick Surtain are both on the clock, are both available when we get on the clock at 10, it's going to be a very interesting conversation, I think.
Who do you think they would take?
I think it's tough, because I think that, they have an inclination to want to take offensive linemen to build strength there. I think they obviously hated what happened to them last year and think that it was terrible that of all the position groups to kind of be betrayed by as far as all injury and that sort of thing and having it as a weakness. It was not comfortable for the Cowboys for them to be weak at offensive line. So I could easily see them convincing themselves that they need to take Rashawn Slater since they're up here and they may not be up here again a lot. But I also think that there is just too much, people have been putting out their list of guys that would be best fits for teams. Have you seen those? Yes. Forget of projections. Like let's just talk about best fits on teams. I honestly don't understand why more people aren't putting Patrick Surtain and the Cowboys together. It just makes too much sense. His running mate is there. There's a need there. The playing style versus what you're required. I think there's just a lot of confluence that's pushing Patrick Surtain to the Cowboys at 10. So I would probably go there.
And I'll be honest, if you ask me this question like 3 hours from now, my opinion might switch. So this is certainly not set in stone. So don't hold me to this because I think what will actually happen, Landon, is when we get on the clock and the draft starts going, my opinion might change. Like I think that's when you find out how much you really like these players, right? When you're on the board. So maybe we need to revisit this in about 2 weeks, but we will continue to do that. Let's take a quick break so I can tell you guys about Bet Online, the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your sports action. Football might be over, but we have NBA, MLB, and NHL are all in full swing. Bet Online even covers awards, TV shows, and reality TV with real-time updated odds and props on almost anything you can imagine. BetOnline has you covered for all the news, scores, and odds. It's the best way to place your bets, and it's free to sign up. Head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just make sure you use that promo code LOCKEDON. BetOnline, your online sportsbook experts. All right, Landon, let's get to some of the questions. This one comes from Jake. Assuming Dallas goes offense in round 1, maybe a Rashawn Slater at number 10, which day 2 cornerback do you think the Cowboys would best fit Dan Quinn's defensive scheme? We've talked about a lot of different guys here, but which one do you think best fits his scheme on day 2?
Well, I think what's been really difficult when kind of answering these questions is defining who is a day 2 cornerback. Sure. I mean, where is Ifeatu Melifonwu going to go? Where is Newsome going to go? Where is, Eric Stokes and Tyson Campbell going to go? I think all of these guys to me are day 2 guys. Maybe not Newsome. Maybe Newsome is probably day one. But yeah, I think probably if I had to choose one, Ifeatu Melifonwu probably is the guy that if he's there at 44, that he probably is the best immediate fit, I imagine. I mean, Campbell and honestly, I like all 3 of those guys at 44. Campbell, Stokes, and Melifonwu. So, and I think that all of them are actually pretty decent scheme fits for what they're looking for. Especially since you consider like there's been seemingly a kind of loosening of the size requirements. It seems like for some of the corners, I think at least as far as weight goes, I think they're looking for speed guys for sure. So I think that all 3 of those guys are people that could be considered as picks there. I can't think of anybody else that would probably be.
Those are really the 3, right?
Those are the 3 I would get.
Campbell, Stokes, and Melifonwu. And listen, we've done a show, I think it was 2 weeks ago, where we talked about these 3 guys specifically and who we liked. I know you're an Eric Stokes guy. I'm Tyson Campbell all the way. I think partly that's why I like Slater at 10, because if you can get Campbell at 44, that's like my ideal draft, because I don't think there's a massive gap between Surtain and Campbell. I know you disagree, and I'm sure you're shaking your head right now.
Wow.
Between
Surtain and Campbell, you don't think there's a big difference?
Well, I mean, I think there's like a tier difference, but I don't think there's a 30 pick difference.
Okay.
I think Tyson Campbell grades out very favorably to AJ Terrell, who the Falcons took last year at pick 16, who happened to be drafted by Dan Quinn. So I think you're getting a very similar player at 44. But I think those are the 3 names. And let's flip this, Landon, because Jewel wants to know who are some possible day 2 picks for the Cowboys if they take Patrick Surtain at number 10. We talked about Slater at 10. What about now Surtain at 10? Who are you looking at on day 2?
Well, I know that they will probably be looking at linebackers, it sounds like, or defensive tackles potentially if there's someone that's worthy of that, just based on what we're hearing.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, we're hearing this all during lying season, so who knows if any of that's even true. So, but I would say, where's Jamin Davis going? Where's I really have a hard time believing that Zaven Collins is going to make it to 44. Barmore, if he fell to 44. Sure. We could talk about some of the safeties too. I don't know how interested they are in that, but I mean, someone like Morag fell or Richie Grant's. I don't think that it doesn't sound like they're interested in Richie Grant, but I would be.
Yeah.
I think
maybe a little bit. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, if you talk, they could potentially look at tackle at 44 if, like, let's say someone like Liam Eichenberg fell or
Alex Leatherwood. Yep.
Alex Leatherwood. Yeah, another guy who that could follow a Rashawn Slater kind of track, where he starts inside and then moves outside. So, the good news for the Cowboys is that in a lot of these scenarios, like, there definitely seemingly is, certain paths that are better than others, but there's a lot of options no matter where they go at 10. It seems like they're not going to be. I think the common fear that we all had early on is, well, what happens if you don't take a defensive player at 10? Like, what happens if someone falls to the Cowboys at 10, whether it's Sewell or Slater or Pitts, and they feel like they have to take that? Are they going to still be able to get the talent they need on the defensive side of the ball with their remaining picks? And just from this exercise, doing it over and over again, it feels like they will have good options either way. Whether they pick an offensive player or a defensive player at 10, there still will be options for them at 44.
I really feel like if they pick Slater at 10, they're more likely just to sit and see who the best defensive player is available at 44. Likely one of those cornerbacks, right? But I truly feel like if Surtain is at the pick at 10, that's when they're going to be aggressive. I think that's when they're going to start going up to the end of the first round, top of the second round. And the guy that, listen, I continue to hear that the Cowboys really like, and Dane Brugler kind of broke this news on the last draft show, that the Cowboys have a first-round grade on Zaven Collins. We've known for a while that they really like him. The Cowboys typically have 14 to 15 first-round grades in their draft board. And if they get Surtain and Collins starts to slip into the late 20s, early 30s, that's when I anticipate the Cowboys going up for Zaven Collins. I think Jamin Davis is another guy that you mentioned. Maybe Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah would make a lot of sense, but I do think those 3 linebackers are who they would be targeting, with that second pick, whether it's trading up or sitting there. Any final guys you want to mention here for the Cowboys at 44?
No, I mean, I think those are the big names that we've covered, and I think those are the names that will likely be available, realistically be available. Now, of course, we're leaving this all open for somebody to fall, which always happens.
Yes.
So, but those are the names that I think you can safely assume, hopefully, that they'll be there at 44. At least one of those names, right?
Yes, I would agree. I think one of those guys, if they're not at 44, I think they're going to start falling into the 30s, and that's when you'll see the Cowboys move up. They've got a ton of draft capital. They're going to want to make sure they get their guys, and I think they're going to be aggressive here. Let's take one more quick break so I can tell you guys about Rock Auto. RockAuto.com is a family business serving auto parts to customers online for over 20 years. They have everything from engine control modules and brake parts, motor oil, and even new carpet. Whether it's for your classic or your daily driver, get everything you need in a few easy clicks delivered directly to your door. The RockAuto.com catalog is unique and remarkably easy to navigate. Quickly see all the parts available for your vehicle and choose the brand, specifications, and prices that you prefer. Best of all, prices at RockAuto.com are always reliably low, and they're the same for professionals and do-it-yourselfers. Why spend up to twice as much for the same parts? Go to RockAuto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. Right, Locked On in the How Did You Hear About Us box, so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Visit RockAuto.com today. All right, Landon, we got this question from a couple different people. I'm going to start with Kevin. He said, do you think the opt-out players will start to slide down now that coaches are getting involved with every team and messing up the draft boards? Do you think it will affect the Cowboys? There's been a lot of opt-out players this year. Seems like a couple of these guys are connected to the Cowboys. We just got done talking about Penei Sewell, Rashawn Slater. Do you think it affects these teams or are going to impact their draft stock?
Do I think the fact that they opted out for the season is going to affect them? Yeah, I mean, I think it does. I think, it's it's like anything else in draft world. It's really the eye of the beholder. A scout may look at it like, okay, well, I have to know. I just kind of have to project this guy forward a year because I only got 2019 tape, and he's a 20-year-old kid when he's doing this, and and then I think there's the less scientific approach to it, where coaches will come and say, I don't want a guy who's opted out of 2020.
Mm-hmm.
Like I wanted a guy who didn't quit, quote unquote quit on his team, or everyone's going to take this information in their own way, through their own lens. And I think there will be negative connotations associated with people that opt out, whether that's fair or not. And I personally don't think it is fair, but it's going to happen. And I think that as far as, the scouting side of it, it makes it incredibly difficult. I think, as someone who is watching these guys, when I have to go back a year to watch the tape, you have a whole 365-day period where you haven't seen these guys, and when you're watching the tape, normally you like to watch a progression. I like to watch a game early in the season and then late in the season to see where he's coming. You don't have any of that. And unless these guys, some of these opt-out guys showed up, like Levi Onwuzurike, but only temporarily, showed up to Senior Bowl practices to kind of give you some kind of check-in to where they are as football players, it's a difficult evaluation. There's a lot of unknown there, and scouts and coaches hate unknown. And that's why this draft is just absolutely bonkers this year, because there's just a lot of unchecked boxes. There's a lot of unknowns out there surrounding these players. And for the guys who have missed a year, obviously Jamar Chase is, one thing, and Penei Sewell is another thing, right? But for guys like,
Tyler
Gregory, Shelvin, Gregory Rousseau, like these guys who you needed to see another year of them, and you didn't get that opportunity. Javon Holland, I think, is another guy who you don't really know what to do with, because you saw a lot of good stuff on his tape that makes you interested, that whetted your appetite to see what happens with him in 2020, but you didn't get that opportunity to see him in 2020. And it's not because of injury. So you really have, or I guess I'll say it this way. We in the media, not on the with these football teams, we have almost nothing to go on. Just basically pro days. At least the scouting departments of these teams, they probably have sources. They probably able to talk to these guys directly to see what their training programs are. They may even have the ability to go to the training facilities that these guys have been working out and get information on exactly how they're progressing athletically over the last year. So, but for us, it's just a ton of unknown. It definitely has an effect on the prospects and their rankings. But the answer here is that it's difficult to kind of tell you how much of an effect the rankings has, because every team is going to take this information in differently, and we have no roadmap for how these teams will take that information, because this is all brand new to everybody. Yeah,
and the only thing I would add is, and you kind of touched on it, is I want to know what a guy was doing after he opted out. Like I believe Rashawn Slater, I hate to keep going back to him, but I believe he was working out with Duke Manyweather, at the O-line mastermind camp, right? Getting better at his craft. And I think you saw him test out of this world at the Northwestern Pro Day. I think guys that did stuff like that, Jamar Chase was another one, working out at these speed camps, and you see him go to the Pro Day and absolutely shine. I think I have less questions about those guys than I do, again, Gregory Rousseau, who had all this time to get ready for the Pro Day and kind of disappointed, right? Those are the guys that really make me nervous. So I don't think it's fair to say, hey, we're knocking everybody down on the board who opted out. I don't think that's fair. I think you need to do case-by-case basis and really investigate, what did these guys do with their 12 months off? I hate to even word it that way.
I would also say that, teams need to be careful about guys that opted out and basically just did speed training only. You know what I'm saying? Because I think there is something to the idea that, just doing an extended training for, a track meet isn't necessarily the same thing as getting football ready for
Correct.
2021. So
100% agree.
I think that's what makes a lot of these angles even more difficult, is that some of these guys who are training, who are putting up impressive numbers, and I'm not including Jamar Chase into this,
No,
right?
no,
but
but
I think
just in general, yes.
Yeah, there are guys out there that like basically just trained for their combine events or their
And
pro
you can
day
see
event,
it, right?
Yeah, and you wonder how much that actually will translate to how they play on the football field.
All right, our last question, and it's actually a combination of questions. This one comes from Zach and Joe. They want us to talk about Mel Kiper's mock draft today. And in case you didn't see it,
Oh boy,
Cowboys sitting at number 10, Patrick Surtain available to them, easily could have pulled the trigger. Instead, they trade back to number 15 with the New England Patriots. The Patriots trade up and get Justin Fields. The Cowboys acquire only a 2022 first-round pick from New England, so they slide back 5 spots. Surtain, I believe, goes to the New York Giants at 11, and the Cowboys take J.C. Horn. So your thoughts on that, and then the question from Joe, how far back could you comfortably trade and still get J.C. Horn in this draft?
15 is probably it, right?
I think that's the very, very bottom, and I think that even makes me a little nervous because the Vikings drafted 14, and we know Mike Zimmer's history of drafting corners, so that one makes me a little nervous.
I honestly don't think that the Cowboys got enough out of that trade either, right? Like,
I mean, a 2022 first is quite a bit.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I would probably be. I don't know that I would risk it for next year's pick. I give me some picks this year. Even if it's a second round pick for this year, I mean that's essentially the same thing as a first round pick for next year. I would prefer that as to just a first round pick for next year. If I'm taking the risk of trading away from someone like Patrick Surtain and potentially, putting myself at risk for not taking either J.C. Horn or Patrick Surtain, I would need a little bit more, I think. But I mean, again, the idea that this ended up working well. Like,
okay, let me give you a different trade.
I would take those results. I just don't know when you're trading away at 10 to go to 15. You don't know that those are going to be the results. So I think I would need a little bit more to take the risk of running the gauntlet of whether those 2 cornerbacks will make it through those 5 picks.
So would you rather take New England's first rounder next year or pick 46 and 97?
46 and 97.
Okay, what about just
I would
46?
rather have that personally.
What about just 46?
Versus their number 1 pick from next year?
Yes. Yeah, so you get a mid-second round pick this year or a first rounder next year.
I'd probably still take the mid-second rounder, I think.
Really? See, I think
I think so. Yeah, I think.
Because the worst case scenario, that first round pick is 32 next year. If you just wait a year, you're adding, 400 points worth of value. I don't know. That's a tricky one.
But I want the player. That's the thing. It's the risk. That's what. It's not just the trade. It's the risk that I'm taking on by trading away from a player a blue chip player that's at a position of need that you're not having to risk any capital to get. Like that's you got to have to entice me away from them, and especially since who did they trade up for? Did they trade up for Mac Jones?
Justin Fields.
Oh, well then, no way, man. Like, no way. You're giving me next year's first, and you're giving me 46.
Wait, why does it matter if it's Mac Jones or Justin Fields?
Because it's a quarterback. I mean, if they're trading up for the quarterback, I'm holding them up for it. Like there's go look at the history. Like quarterbacks that you pay a premium when you're trading up for them. If a quarterback is available, especially Justin Fields, who a lot of guys on a lot of boards will view as like, number 1 or number 2 on their board. There's teams out there that probably have Justin Fields as their number 1 quarterback, right? Like there's got probably one team.
Yeah,
right?
I'm sure there probably is. Yeah.
But my point is that Justin Fields is a very well thought of quarterback. Mac Jones is, a guy that we're kind of talking about potentially, pushing into the top 10 so that, people can get their quarterbacks. But if it's Justin Fields that falls to 10, no. They need to give us more if they're coming to get their quarterback in the future, you're paying to come get him.
I would love,
especially for New England. Screw Belichick, man. I'm not giving him a quarterback. I'm not giving him Justin Fields. You're coming to get it. You're paying me a lot.
Oh man, I do agree. I think 15 is the bottom where you can trade down and expect to get J.C. Horn, but you better have 2 other guys that you feel really comfortable drafting. Whether that's Christian Darrisaw, the tackle from Virginia Tech, or maybe it's a linebacker, maybe it's Zaven Collins.
Ojulari. If they like Ojulari like that, I could take me back to 15. And if I could still get Ojulari,
I agree.
I feel good. But again, if they're trading up for a quarterback, they better come with a strong offer. I mean, that's ridiculous.
That is it for today's show. Thank you guys for tuning in. As always, you can download and subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can follow the show on Twitter at Locked On Cowboys. You can subscribe on YouTube. We're really trying to push our YouTube channel, so please do that. You can follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus_Mosher, and we will